Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Antique Auction Forum podcast. I'm Martin Willis, your host. We are certainly in trying times in this country and around the world, and I decided to do a podcast. I mentioned kind of the focus on the podcast is this is time-stamped, started, I believe, on March 31st, recording with a few auction companies, and it's currently April 4th. 2020, and so it's a timestamp podcast talking about what is going on in the world and the world of antiques and fine arts auctions and where to move forward. So the initial guest that I had is Steve Fletcher, and he is a partner and an American furniture specialist at Skinner Auction Company in Boston and in the Boston area. And then we go over to Wes Cowan, who is out in the mid-states in Ohio, and we talk to him about what he is doing in his last auction results. And then out to the West Coast, where I used to work at Clars Auction Gallery in Oakland, California, and speak with Rick Unruh. He is talking about his March sale, and he has a optimistic view and also makes a lot of good points like the others. The last segment of the show is with a longtime friend. And he is a global picker, actually, Greg Willett, and I'll be talking to him last. And so I hope you all are healthy and are staying safe, and we'll be right back with our first guest, Steve Fletcher. All right, so I'm on the line with Stephen Fletcher, and Stephen is head of the Americana department at Skinner, a longtime company with a great reputation. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate it.
And would you say Skinner has been in business how long exactly?
Oh, my goodness, 50 some odd years.
Right. And we've seen a lot of hurdles over the years with the downturn in the economy and different things happening, and then never really the recovery of good American furniture or, mediocre furniture, that is, for the most part, since 2008. This is a new one on all of us. And how are you doing there at Skinner?
We're doing all right. I think what we have to do is recognize this dramatically changed atmosphere and realize that it has to be dealt with in a new way. So what we're doing currently is not that new to Skinner. I don't mean the problem. The problem is beyond anyone's belief. Mm-hmm. But the way we're dealing with it is we have things to sell, interesting things. So, for example, the sale that the Americana department has coming up was originally scheduled to be a live auction, the first section on April 4, about 270 lots or so. And then the second part would have been, as it has been now traditionally for several years, like a timed online sale. And so we altered it a little bit early on and decided to continue with a live auction, only we'd have an auctioneer but no audience. Mm-hmm. So you have your phone bidders, absentee bidders, people bidding online, Bid Square, Skinner Live, and that's not all that different than live auctions, and that is, everyone knows, I think, if they go to lots of sales, the audiences are nowhere as big as they used to be, at least in person. They're all out there. You just can't see them.
Yeah. That's going to be really, I know you're the longtime auctioneer there.
Right.
As an auctioneer myself, I'm going to say that's going to feel awkward to actually do an auction where you're not actually, you're talking to the phone bidders basically and absentee bidders, and then you're talking to the online audience. Now, do you actually do your auctions? Some auctioneers do the video as well, live during the auction. Do you do that?
What we do is we do not. The video does not show the auctioneer, but rather the object. And there's a soundtrack, so you can see what you can hear. I should say what's happening in the room, and people get a pretty sense because what they're hearing is live, like a few seconds delay or whatever. But in this case, we finally reverted to the whole auction will be conducted online, a timed auction. So the live part, we decided to abandon that and simply go with the timed approach because it's proven to be very successful. I can speak for my department especially. The online participation is most excellent. People trust Skinner to give them good advice, provide them with additional photographs, condition reports, and we work very hard at that, and that's also something that isn't new to Skinner. We've done that for many, many years. That's something Bob Skinner said he would do right from the get-go, is represent property accurately, citing its faults or its attributes,
Yeah.
So I think we have if I may say so, I think we have a very trusting relationship between our buyers. They trust us to give them this straight information, and as a result, there's been decades, I think, of goodwill produced as a result of that effort. The last maybe two auctions, maybe three, there have been more than 1,000 bidders, and let me tell you,
wow.
As far as bidding in the room is concerned, you could have a major auction and like 38 people show up, and they don't stay that long.
That's right.
So those bidders are out there, and for a guy that like me who's been at Skinner's ever since I was a teenager, it's a changed atmosphere. Skinner was very, very early on to establish Skinner Live, so we had kind of a head start in that area of having our own website for bidding at Skinner, and it's proven to be a wonderful investment for us, and it works. What can I say?
Can you explain to the person that may not be aware of how a timed auction works compared to a normal auction?
Sure. Well, in this case, both sections of the sale begin at noon on April 4th. The first part of the sale ends on April 13 at 7 p.m. Second part ends April 15 at 7 p.m. And we staggered it a little bit because there's an awful lot of material there. So it gives the folks who want to bid on a number of lots a little greater opportunity, a bigger window, if you will, to participate. I can tell you from personal experience, every once in a while something comes up at Skinner's that I would like to bid on, so I have no advantage to working there, no inside information. Online, I have no idea who's bidding. But as a result, somebody said, well, that whole competitive atmosphere in the room is gone. No, it isn't. I can tell you that it's very much alive on the internet, and sometimes I win things and sometimes I don't. Times that I've won things, I certainly have paid as much or more than I might have had I left a bid, for example. You really do get involved in the I can't explain it. It's you don't know who the competition is, you don't know who you're bidding against, and so it creates this atmosphere in which I feel like, oh my God, it's a little stressful, but it's exciting, and that's actually that echoes very much the way I think people feel about live auctions. You're vying for a thing, you're holding your paddle up, and you see your contemporaries around you bidding as well. The unknown thing here is, who are my contemporaries? You have no idea who's bidding.
That's right.
So it's worked very well for us, and in fact, we have said on occasion, gee, I think that brought money online than it would have live. I think in the case of furniture, for example, buying a piece of furniture is it's a fairly major decision. It takes up a lot of space in a room. It's a very important part of someone's decorative scheme of their collection. So the idea of giving people days to think about it, and sometimes what I've done, I'll take an image from a Skinner catalog, and there it is on my phone, and I literally will stand. I've done this with painting, stand in the corner of a room, and you can kind of visualize the picture on the wall, if you will, and think, that would work, or it wouldn't work. So maybe a lot of other people do that. I have no idea. I would think they would. So as far as this sale is concerned, we've had lots of interest, and I'm looking at Help Scout, and all these inquiries come in, and today they continue to come in from a variety of people all over the place. And I must admit, I don't know who a lot of these people are, but they ask good questions.
Well, there's a lot of people sitting at home right now. This is most of my podcasts are just they're kind of timeless, but this one's definitely time-stamped because of what we're going through. But
it's a timed podcast.
Yeah, that's right. So in a timed auction, would people bid, does it have like a closing bid where you just have to bid before then, or just like a regular auction?
Well, what happens is that normally, the closure of any given sale and your opportunity to bid is incremental. So it doesn't all close at once. It closes incrementally until all of the lots have finally been sold. So if somebody says, obviously they can't bid at the last second on 5 different lots. It's impossible. We discovered that very early on. So the sale closes over a period of time. I mean, I was in New Hampshire, in Exeter, on a house call, and I thought, how much time do I have between now and when I get home? I live 2.5 hours from there, 3 hours, I don't know. So I figured out, by the time this part of the sale ends, I'll be home. So when I got home, I had 23 minutes to spare. And I had 2 things I wanted to bid on. So it's been a long drive, so I poured a nice glass of Sauvignon Blanc, and that was a mistake. And
bid a little high?
Yeah, a little bit. I got pretty excited. But I won the 2 lots. And in retrospect, I said to myself, I paid more for those than I would have if I'd left a bid. So that's part of it. At any rate, it gives people a chance to bid throughout the sale. It doesn't all end at once. And there are instances where there's, in the last day or 2 of any timed auction, it is a live auction. And as the hours come down to a precious few, as it says in that song, September Song, I think. Anyway, the bids start coming fast and furious, and you literally can see them change before your eyes. No one is aware of what anybody else is bidding, and with Skinner's website, it'll simply say in green, high bid, so you're good. Well, then you we go back and said, you've been outbid, please bid again. So you have a choice of bidding again. It's pretty easy. When there's a lot of interest, let's say in a particularly rare lot, and there are a lot of bids stacking up almost simultaneously, that particular lot, the closing time will be extended, sometimes 5 minutes or more, because as long as the bids are coming, and you're not waiting a long time, but you can wait a minute or 2 for others. It's yet again another opportunity for somebody that take a deep breath and think, okay, I got to do it now or not. It works.
Wow.
It's successful.
Yeah, that really sounds an interesting way to bid. Now, what about for the people that are watching this on YouTube? You can see there's a beautiful chest of drawers that you're kneeling next to. Just a gorgeous piece. That sold for an enormous amount of money only last November. You can talk briefly about that, but I wanted to know what you thought the future or the contemporary times of right now. How do you think furniture is going to fare online when there's shipping, or do you think that the local people will come and pick up the really fine locally made period pieces?
Yeah, I suspect that people will come and pick things up. There may be a little bit of delay. It depends on just what Charlie Brown, our governor, says about access to any business for that matter. But I know that someone came to look at a couple things, and the things were brought outside. And they said, this is even better. There's more light. But the high-res images are really good. So in many instances, let's say somebody wants to buy there's a really, in the sale is a lovely Tiger Maple, Massachusetts Queen Anne dressing table, and it has like a compass, mariner's compass inlay on the top. It's the sweetest thing. People will ask for an image. I want to see the inlay on the top. Take the drawers out. I want to see the underside of the top. I want to see the construction of the drawers. Can you show me the dovetailing? Can you show me the bottoms? Are the drop pendants original? Are the brasses original? In this case, the brasses are later than the piece. I would think the piece is made in 1730 or 40. The brasses are really cool. At some point, somebody modernized the piece, if you will. Probably had little Queen Anne tiny brasses at some point. This now has very attractive federal brasses, and as far as I'm concerned, it jazzes the piece up a little bit more. Didn't need any help, but at any rate, but the brasses are nifty. They have like an embossed beehive, and it says nothing without labor. So those are really, I don't think they're a negative myself. At any rate, if someone is interested in that, they can ask for whatever they want as far as images are concerned. In the end, when somebody says, well, what do you think? I mean, a lot of it just has to do, I guess, with experience, one's personal taste. It's a judgment call. It's subjective, too. I mean, is this in really great condition? I think it is. And it's true, in my opinion, and hopefully it would be echoed in the person asking the question,
Well, I guess we'll end on this question. Are you optimistic that we can keep carrying on at this time and should
still
consider selling and buying?
I think what people in the auction industry are looking at currently is just results of recent sales. I think Jeffrey Evans had a sale of 19th century lighting just 2 days ago. It went well. Skinner had a sale of militaria with some very interesting historically important stuff. That went very well. Cowan had a sale. I heard good reports about that. There's a lot of interest out there, and I think people still want to collect. I think if you're a dyed-in-the-wool collector, it's like nothing's going to stop me. Well, I hope that's the attitude.
Yes.
So the only thing I can say about this particular sale is that the inquiries are coming in nicely, and they're on par with other sales where we didn't have this big problem out there. So I'm so cautiously optimistic, and I think the auction business in the last 20 years, as we've all seen, has adapted to all kinds of changes. I mean,
That's
the first
true.
sales I worked at Skinner's, we didn't have telephone bids.
That's right.
Well, then
Yep.
there were absentee bids. Then came telephone, and then came the internet. And
Well, we had fax bids too.
Exactly. And Bid Square, for example. Those are all means by which a very diverse audience can at least access information about your sale. So I have not heard about any sale in the past. I mean, it seems like a week now. It seems like a year. But I haven't heard about any sales that haven't gone well at this juncture, which is reassuring.
It's almost like a snowstorm. Everyone thinks no one else is going to be there, and everybody's there. In a way,
Well,
that's kind of how I'm seeing this
That's
work.
an interesting analogy because many years ago, this is decades ago, we had a sale of shaker material, and these two brothers in New Hampshire had collected the material, and there was a terrible snowstorm. But Skinner had said, I think he'd learned in an earlier occasion, many, many years ago before this, we used to have a sale like the day after, I think, Thanksgiving, and the weather was terrible, so he canceled it. Well, all these people showed up, and they had come from tremendous distances,
Wow.
and they were mad as hell.
Wow.
The Skinners said, we're not going to do this we're not going to postpone an auction because of weather. So going back to the shaker sale, horrible snowstorm. We lost our power. We had a gasoline-powered generator that produced just enough light. I mean, this is before computers, so you don't have to worry about internet access. At any rate, the sale was a big success. So many people showed up, and it was like sort of this almost a party atmosphere.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know. This is. Yeah. I think we'll weather this storm too. We have a lot of people at Skinner's who've been there for years, and people like the work they do. It's a happy place to work. So it's not an easy business,
Yeah, it's harder as a technology. You think it would go the other way around, but it's a lot of work to make sure people have the right information. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been a real pleasure talking to you as always.
Thank you, Martin, and I appreciate your reaching out to speak to me.
Sure. My guest now is Wes Cowan. How are you, Wes?
I'm great. How are you today?
Some of my longtime listeners might remember you were on a show so long ago you don't even remember.
I'm an old man. That doesn't surprise me at all. I hardly remember what I did yesterday.
Well, we were talking about your history detective show mostly.
Okay.
Which
ancient history.
Yeah, that's too bad because that show was. I love that show, and I thought you couldn't have a better job than do something like you were doing. It just seemed like so much fun. I mean, that's one of the funnest parts, researching these things. And that's too bad. Do they play reruns out there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think so. I think you can watch any of them on PBS's website.
Well, we are in interesting times, unfortunately. And like I mentioned to Steve Fletcher, who was just on, this is a time-stamped podcast when generally podcasts can be up for years and, they kind of still work. Everything, seems like you could listen to it yesterday or 3 years from now. This one is definitely time-stamped because we're in the situation we are in today, which is pretty scary. But here we are. We have to move forward in business. And I watched your auction. It was a week and a half ago, or was it a week ago?
The 20th of March, yes.
It was brilliant. It went incredibly well. And so I wanted you to talk. What do you think is? You think that's going to maintain? And what did you do differently to make that auction work the way it did?
Well, look, I think that all of us know that that there's no such thing as a live auction before a gallery of bidders anymore. Not until this blows by us or blows through us or whatever we're going to call it. But we were very cognizant of that before the sale, and we made quite a bit of effort to encourage our bidders to bid online, either through Cowan's live bidding platform, our proprietary bidding platform, or through Invaluable or Live Auctioneers or BidSquare, 3 other online bidding platforms. And we feel like we were pretty successful. We had a lot of action on all 4 of those platforms, but most on Cowan's Live. In fact, we almost sold as much on Cowan's Live as BidSquare, Live Auctioneers, and Invaluable combined.
Wow.
So there was a lot of our email campaign to our existing customers seems to have worked. And we also, this was before we were ordered not to be open. We also had allowed people by appointment to come in one at a time to preview the sale. And we also, on the day of the sale, were able to use our staff for telephone bidding. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do that going forward, but we were able to do that on that particular day, and I think that also, of course, makes a difference. But overall, we were very pleased. We saw 30% of our bidders, our registrants, there are not the registered, but the people who actually bid, were new to Cowans, and about the same amount of buyers, in other words, people who won something the day of the auction, were also new. So 30% on both sides there. We thought that was very encouraging, and you know, perhaps a reflection of people sitting at home in front of their computers and saying, man, what am I going to do? I mean, if you collect this stuff, you got to collect, you've got to buy it, or you're not a collector anymore. So I think that people are potentially spending a lot more time in terms of in front of their computer. I also
Yes.
had reached out and done a lot of social media on Facebook, and I'm sure we were on Instagram and Pinterest, and all these places reaching out to people saying, "Hey, here's a place to bid."
Right. I remember the last time we talked, I believe you had just built that platform. You're talking about your bidding platform, which is, I don't remember any other auction houses at that time. You were kind of a pioneer in doing that, weren't you?
Well, I don't know that I don't know how much of a pioneer we were. There were other bidding platforms, but we had proprietary software that we built and added to and rebuilt and worked on over almost 15 years. And we have a programmer who is employed um, by the software company that we ultimately spun off, called Fair Warning Software. And we asked James how hard it would be to build a live bidding platform. He said, I can probably do it. It'll probably take me a month of programming. And, he did. So, as far as I know, we may be the only person that has their own proprietary live bidding platform that we built ourselves. But as you know, there are plenty of other
Oh, yeah.
competitors that have this now.
Right. Yeah, I was meaning your company having its own. So I'm trying to picture how your auction, this last one, went. You you had an auctioneer yourself, or an auctioneer, and you had phone bidders, absentee bids, and then people on all the applets, on all the bidding platforms there,
Yep.
but no audience. Is that how it went?
Audience doesn't make it much fun for the auctioneer.
Yeah,
But,
it must be kind of awkward in a way.
and if we didn't have phone bidders, then you wouldn't even the computer, and we're going to see more and more of that. I think. I like to be able to include phone bidders when possible, but our number one concern at this point on March the 30th, 2020, is the health and safety of our employees, and of course, anyone who comes to our auction gallery. So until we can feel confident that we can protect our employees, we are unlikely to have a live auction, and a live auction in the traditional sense. I, I think that we're going to see this trend, and we already are seeing this as we move forward. Auctions are going to continue to happen. They're just not going to happen with people in the gallery, and whether they're going to happen with people on the telephone is going to vary from state to state.
Right. When I spoke with Steve at Skinner's, he said that they're doing timed auctions from this point on. Do you see that as something you may look into trying?
Well, we've always done timed auctions.
I
We
see.
have we had a proprietary timed auction program that we used actually long before we had the live bidding applet. So we do a number of timed auctions. I don't know how many we did last year. I'm going to say 25 timed online only auctions. In other words, And when I say a timed online auction, online only auction, I mean an eBay style auction where we post the lots that we're selling. People can bid for a week, and then at 12 o'clock at the on the seventh day of the auction, we start the auction, and every 1.5 minutes or 1 minute, a lot is clerked and sold. So, if you're bidding live, you can bid live on your computer just like you would on eBay, and you can snipe last minute bidders. Although we make it hard because we have an extended bidding option that we use that allows us to extend the bidding so that sniping really doesn't occur.
Now, I noticed a lot of your furniture did very well too, and I was actually surprised at that when I was watching. Was
Well,
that? Yeah, go ahead.
I, I think that the week part of the sale was our furniture. Um, Better furniture did okay. Some did better than okay. I would say most of it did just okay, and then there were a number of lots that passed. You know,
Hmm.
in this particular time, and honestly, it's something that we've seen as a trend actually before COVID-19. Um, Small things outperform furniture in general. We live in a time now where many of collectors who are baby boomers are downsizing, or they already have a house full of stuff, and they're not looking for pieces of furniture. If you're a furniture collector, you want to concentrate and focus on superior examples. And so, if there's a piece of furniture that comes to auction that has any excuse to be made, by excuse to be made, I mean it's been refinished, or there's been some repairs, or anything that would cause someone to think, do I really need this piece of furniture? It will sell, but it will not sell necessarily for what it might have sold 10 years ago, for example. And I think that's what we saw in this sale. There were a number of pieces of furniture that we didn't sell. So the sale was good. It was in terms of sell through, we sold I think about 85%.
That's great, really.
I mean,
Yeah.
15% we didn't sell. So
Hmm. Hmm.
anyway, that's my thought about furniture.
It's a really good time, for the listener out there. It is a really good time to buy really nice pieces of furniture. And, like Wes just said, something with, say it's refinished, if that doesn't bother you and it's still a beautiful piece, it sure beats going to IKEA, if you ask me. Would you tell us what you think as far as this particular last auction, did something seem to trend fairly high in a category?
Well, I think there were a number of areas where I was pleased. We had a collection from north of Cincinnati, collection of Americana that had a lot of great early lighting in
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
part of the
Yeah.
production. And there was a lot of it. And I was frankly concerned that A, people weren't interested in that lighting, and B, that we were going to be stuck with a lot of it. So I was pleasantly surprised that people were still interested in this, that there were bidders who recognized that this was an unusual group of good early American lighting, and it did very well. I think some of the stoneware that we had also did well. So anything that was good and it was small that could be put into a box and shipped, I think performed well.
Right. I saw that too. I totally agree with that. I didn't watch the entire auction, but I kept checking in and watching things. And I do remember some really great lighting pieces. As far as, this is a tough time to talk to consigners, I would think, to, kind of comfort them and say, you've already consigned this piece. Once people consign something, they're used to not living with it. They usually want it to go. And but I'm sure there's some conversations you've had to have.
Yeah, there were several, but most were, as you say, they didn't want it back. They questioned, well, is this really the time to do this? And my reaction was, in 25 years, I've never canceled an auction. I've had auctions in the middle of snowstorms where it was snowing and there was 8 inches of snow on the ground, and people still came to the auction. So I think that the experience that we had 10 days ago is the same experience that many auctioneers are having right now. That if they have good merchandise and quality merchandise, fresh to the market, that's reasonably estimated, it's going to sell and it's going to do very well. There were several major auctions this last weekend on the 28th, I guess, that I watched, and I was astonished that people were spending 5 figures, 6 figures for some of the items, and it was all online. So as long as people remain confident in the economy and they recognize that there's a chance that they can get a buy, that we're still going to have bidders. And so far, that's the message that I give to the consigners, that look, I've seen no fall off in consumer confidence as it relates to bidding at auction. People are bidding and people are buying.
That's true. And there's always going to be people that need to sell. Situations of estates or whatever it is, they just plain need to sell. So it will happen one way or the other.
And that's the hard part for us now, because when we do get a consigner call, we have to be very concerned about, do we want to send one of our specialists on a house call?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
My son, who works in our Denver office, got a call from an 82-year-old gentleman who last week who said, I'd like for you to come out and look at some property. My son wisely said, I don't think that you really want me. You're not thinking through this. You really don't want me to come. Now, the ramifications of that are twofold. A, it's good for the potential consigner that we're concerned about his health, and of course we're concerned about our employees' health. But B, it also means that we're not getting consignments. We can't pick up a consignment because we have to be worried about getting someone infected. So
yes.
This is going to be the problem that all auction houses will face the longer this goes on. I think everybody has material, most of the larger houses anyway, have material in the pipeline for another couple months. But after that, it's going to get tough.
Yes. I spoke with a friend. He's going to be on later on in this show, John McGinnis, and he says he has 7 auctions warehoused. But you're right. After that, it gets scary. I personally had an appraisal lined up again with a 85 or 86, something like that, year-old gentleman that I canceled because of the same concerns. I don't want to be responsible for.
Well, even if you have 7 auctions in your warehouse, you have to have someone processing that material,
Exactly.
And you have to be photographing the material and putting it online for people to bid on. And in states where all businesses have been mandated to close by the state governor, that makes it really tough.
Yes, and that's exactly the situation that it is in Massachusetts at this time.
Exactly.
Right. Wes, as always, I know you don't remember talking to me before, but as always, it's nice talking to you.
Martin, it's always talking to you. Thanks very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. All right. Take care. Thank you.
Take care. You bet.
All right. Now, my next guest is Rick Unruh. And did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Unreal, close,
Yeah.
You had a little inflection, which is kind of nice.
And we worked for a short while, we figured out, together when I was out at Clars Auction Gallery out in Oakland, California. It's going to be one of the larger auction houses now in California, wouldn't you say? I mean, you do about 20 million a year there, right?
Yes, that's pretty much on target what we usually do. Hopefully, we'll do more
Yeah.
with the new ownership. But yeah, I mean, in the West Coast, we are one of the only players outside of a handful of people.
Right, right. And when I was there for 6 years, and I do recall that we were handling something like 6,500 items a month. Is that volume still happening there?
That is pretty much what we do. Yes, I mean we have one 3-day auction every month, every 4 to 5 weeks, and it does add up to that. And we try to get it all done that weekend, and sometimes there's late nights. But yes,
Yeah. I used to tell
Yes.
people kind of jokingly, but probably on the true side, is that it's about, 500 really good items out of that 6,500. And then, but that is such a great service that is so needed because people have to sell, and that is not going to change. And, we're in a time, where things are tough, but people are still continuing. They're going to need to sell.
yeah,
And
I mean that is definitely what I've been telling people. I mean, the word essential can be defined any way you like, and it's not so black and white. There's a gray area there, and we do provide a way for people to liquidate their assets so they have some money. And I know, if banks can be open, we are not open to the public, by the way. We are not. I want to make that perfectly clear. But what we have in house has been here for a while. We've been selling, and we have some nice estates, which we can talk about later. But this is a very important business for people that are going to be having tough times ahead, with either no job at all, or getting unemployment, or who knows how long this is going to last, and how it's going to go going forward. In terms of people having a job when they come out of this.
right, exactly. And there's close to 40 people that work there, if I remember right, over 35.
Well, we have
30?
35
Yeah.
full and part time, and right now we only have 8.
Yeah. Wow.
We're functioning with 8 people.
Well, I remember spending many, many long hours there cataloging, sometimes until 2 o'clock in the morning. I had been there a few times, to meet the deadlines. And I don't
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be doing that with the 8 of us, and everybody is
Sure.
like I think I talked earlier, wears many hats. I mean,
Yes.
I'm the CEO and president of this place, but I'm also a cataloger, and I'm also the director of fine arts still, and I'm answering phones in the front office. So we have to do everything to get through this crisis and do it in a streamlined way and a safe way.
Right. And have you had a sale since the hit the fan?
We did. I mean, the funny thing is we had a sale that was, as I say, all you need to do is like flick on the on switch. It was already prepared, cataloged, photographed. We just had to change the way we executed it, in the sense that we had no public come to this. We had no floor bidders, because that just wouldn't be acceptable. And we did it all with locked doors on the platforms, with the various bidding platforms that everybody uses. I don't know if I should say it on this, but and that was very good. And also we had telephone bidding, and we had absentee. So we got it done, and I don't know if I told you this, but it was 20% better than March of 2019.
That is really good news to hear. I mean, that you actually
we
did
were scared
better.
Saturday night. We didn't know this was going to happen, but all of a sudden, everything did really well. Our sell-through was high. Everything was incredible, and just with a handful of people.
Did you have people outside trying to get in?
No. Now, we did have almost like a reservation at a restaurant or your doctor's office. We had appointments for one person to come in and preview for half an hour. They were slots, and you would have to go, everybody was dressed in their proper safety wear, and you're 6 feet away, and people could look at something, and then they could register, online later. And somebody was outside, they had to stay outside. Kind of like the restaurants that, when you order a pizza, it's one at a time, and it's done very safely. That's the only public-private previewing we had. And actually, it went over very well. I mean, I would say 90% of the people are like, this is great. Let's do this again. because they got special attention where they have the whole place to themselves, as opposed to, a mass group of people, maybe 500 or so, that come in for the auction days, various times, and you have to watch them and you have to pay attention. And I
That's
think
right.
that's the way of the future, actually. And this is, unfortunately, this is how a pandemic made it happen this way. But I think it's going to gravitate that way anyway on its own, with just the way things are going to be working in the world.
Well, there's a lot of people that were saying that, audiences have gone way down, and that is true for the most part since online has happened. But I will say, I do remember the gentleman counting people at the door, and there were a lot of auctions, even, it didn't matter when it was, where there was over 3,500 people that came in the door and out the door, at least previewing and maybe selling. Was that number still very high since you've taken over in August?
It is. That's funny you mentioned that. It has gone down substantially from when you were here, because the internet presence,
Yes.
in the kind of the younger generation, doesn't really want to come. They rather just see it all online on their phones or their tablets or their laptops. You still have I would say, the over 60 crowd, which definitely likes to come. But as I've been seeing a progression of online bidding go from about 25% to about 70%
Wow.
of all our sales.
Yeah. Now, when I was there, Invaluable did not let, let's see, you couldn't belong to Live Auctioneers and be on Invaluable, but now you can. Are you also using that platform?
Yes, we use both, and we have our own in-house one called Clars Live.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and we are entertaining maybe, if everything goes well with the future, and we go back to full capacity again, using BidSquare as well, because I know they've
Yes.
improved their website substantially from when they first started. So,
Yes, I've heard a lot of really good things about BidSquare, and I'm signed up
very
just so I get
user-friendly.
to notice. What's that?
Yeah, it's very user-friendly. Sorry, not to interrupt you.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm signed up just to get notices on BidSquare, and a lot of there's some really good auctions on there. For the person that is not familiar with what you generally have come through there, you have a lot of beautiful California art, but you get just about anything through there. I mentioned before the sheer volume; you're going to see everything. But in
Yeah,
that,
we do.
yeah. In the area, you're from the East Coast, you're from Connecticut, you moved out there. You see a lot of European and really nice, fine things. And so I'm also going to give you a chance to plug the website. It's very easy, clars.com. Anyone can check that out. But so why don't you, if you can, kind of go over the type of different auctions you have, because right now you can't really have the offline auction like the Saturday.
Yeah,
Like
I
it
mean,
used
the
to be.
offline auction, if you can believe it, is something we're going to maybe hopefully eliminate, because it's very low price things and very little money for anybody.
Yes.
And it's also offline, so it's really just for our local crowd. But there is a scenario, and we all know this, that when you take a whole estate, you take everything within reason, and you can't just cherry pick. Cherry picking, as we say, is a lot of auction houses do that, and that's fine. And sometimes we do collaborations with them. If they're going to take things extremely high and they get the call first, we'll work with them selling some of the mid-range stuff. But we do want the higher end things. I mean, I think I mentioned to you before, I mean, we are handling what's left of the Robin Williams estate out of Tiburon.
Wow.
And there's some very nice art pieces, and that's going to be featured on April 19th on our one-day sale. And we're kind of excited about that. I mean, we're going to have a smaller amount of lots, but it's going to be higher quality. And, we'll see what we can do with that. And also Frank J. Caulfield is also going to be featured in that sale. And he was one of the venture capitalist investors with Thomas Perkins, one of the early ones. So he's here in the Silicon Valley and San Francisco area. He's legendary, but you probably haven't heard of him out in your neck of the woods. But maybe like somebody on Wall Street might.
Wow.
So he has some good property. I mean, yeah, wait till you see this stuff. You're going to like it.
Wow. And that's where I lived. I lived in Tiburon, and I just got to tell a quick story because it's funny. I was in Paradise Market, which is outside of Tiburon, actually toward, I can't even remember exactly where at this point. But I saw Robin Williams behind me in line at the grocery store, and I got into a conversation with him. And I told him I loved Mrs. Doubtfire, and he did a little bit of the Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's
and
great.
in the conversation, no, this really ends great. In the conversation, he asked what I did. I basically told, well, I'm an auctioneer, and you know what? He auctioned things. Everyone in the store came around and watched him auction off like vegetables and stuff. He was actually a really good auctioneer, just like that.
I could see that. I mean, that's a great story. I mean, the guy was just a genius. I mean, very quick and, of course, funny. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
Good story.
Yeah, that was something, a sad loss. And so those paintings are coming up on the April 19th. This is,
Yes.
of course, 2020, as
Yes.
this will be a time-stamped podcast I've been telling people because of where we're at now. How do you foresee just if you had to guess, we have no idea where this thing is going to go. Are you concerned that you're going to get an order out there where, nobody can come to work and, what then?
Well, I mean, that is something that we are concerned with, and we have a plan where we will follow that,
Yes.
And if we have to shut down, we'll shut down. But we'll come back when we can come back.
Yep.
Stronger, and probably, as we say, if you're going to be at a casino, double down and just have a huge either May or June auction that'll be almost like 2 for 1, because some of these things about this business, you got to keep it going, and we have
That's
property.
right.
But the property, and maybe I mentioned this or not, is people don't want any pickups, and I understand that. I mean, if they're going to lock down, they can't have a truck and crew guys coming in their house touching everything.
Yes.
And so that's kind of on hold for a while, but just for a while, because people need to sell their property. And so it's going to be happening. It's just going to be, the floodgates are kind of jammed right now. And when they open up, I expect everything to be back to normal. I mean, maybe, of course, social distancing might be a regular thing amongst everybody for a while.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. But I think the auction houses, especially Clars, can adapt and be successful in this environment. And it's a good learning curve in how we have to adapt going forward to modernize ourselves too, what's going to be successful and what's not.
Yeah. I think it's a learning curve for every one of us, and it will be really interesting. The old saying, for every action, there's a reaction. We'll see, how it'll affect how we go forward from this point on. And hopefully, Wes Cowan that was on earlier said you're either a collector or not. So there's going to be a demand. People are going to want to buy. And right now, a lot of people are stuck at home and looking at the walls. So
they are definitely bored, and they are looking at the auctions right now.
Yes.
And they're buying things, which is great.
That's right. Rick, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure and always fun to talk to you.
Thanks, Martin. Very nice talking to you, and stay warm out there and safe, of course.
Yeah, that's right. All right, take care. All right, my next guest is my final guest for this podcast is Greg Willett. Greg Willett, I met Greg. I was thinking about this today. Greg, I met you back in 1977. That was the year, and I just want to set the stage for. I know you were on a very early podcast here. I told the story, I do believe, but I was driving along to Colorado for a job in Niwot at an auction house in Niwot, Colorado, little tiny town, and I'm somewhere like in Indiana, and this I remember it as a yellow
Kansas.
Dodge van. I'm not sure if it was yellow.
Kansas.
Was it yellow? Yeah.
Yeah,
Goes
Kansas.
flying by me with about 30 pressed back oak chairs tied to the top. So like hours and hours later, I pull into this rest stop. I believe even in another state, and there you were. So we had a conversation, just a quick conversation. I said, wow, I'm in the antiques world. I never really said, hey, I'm going to Niwot and all that stuff. And where are you in Colorado? All that. Never really got into a conversation. And then about 3 months later, my sister was out in Colorado too, in Lyons, Colorado. No, she was outside Alliance. I can't remember the name of the town, but I went over for a barbecue and we were playing volleyball, and I turned around and there you were on my team. That's how we met. That was in 1977, and I don't say that we really, we didn't really talk much then, but over the years, you moved back where I lived, and there was all kinds of crisscrosses, and now you're out in Appleton, Wisconsin, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. And so you have, as mentioned in the previous show, you have picked not all over the country, but all over the world. You've picked you're a door knocker or a picker, a global picker, not an American picker. And Mexico, right? And China.
Canada, Mexico.
Canada. Oh, yeah, a lot in Canada, right?
A lot.
Yeah. And
Spain, Portugal, France, East Berlin, and then most recently, although it's not that recent, 2002 to 2008, I was working in China, where it took me 2.5 years to get permission to go into the villages.
wow.
And then came the Olympics, and everything changed, and I've been a homeboy since then.
Now, for the people that are watching this video on YouTube, this is an audio podcast mostly, but for the ones who do watch it on YouTube, you're wearing your mask. You're wearing your bandana mask.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Safety first.
Yeah. So we are in such a strange time, and this is, I've told other people on the show, this is kind of like a time-stamped podcast right in the middle of this thing, and the date now is April 4th, 2020, and we're dealing with the virus, and we're always going to be talking in the future, oh, that's the way it was before the virus, and this is and probably, realistically, sort of like the beginning of the virus, and we're here today not to talk about that, but to talk about the antiques business. And I know I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself, but I know, for instance, you've had a really big eBay presence, and are you still doing that?
Yes. As I get older, I change my business a little bit, but eBay, I've sold, I think at this point, over 20,000 items on eBay.
Wow.
In about 13 years. And there's some guys that sell that much in a year, but I'm not selling blue widgets, I'm selling antiques.
Yeah.
And I learned a long time ago, I didn't put it to use until recently, but smalls and smiles spell success.
Yeah.
And although I've sold cars on eBay, et cetera, if you can hold it in your hand and it has value, it's not a fun way to sell, but you sell to the world and there's money to be made. So yeah, I haven't done much eBay in the last 2 weeks because of the lockdown. I took it as an excuse to take a little vacation in my own home.
Yeah. Are you driving yourself crazy yet?
No, but I did have to establish about 5 days ago. I realized I had to establish structure because I was floating around and I was obsessed. I like politics. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I understand medicine because I went to Georgetown University pre-med. So I was getting obsessed with 24/7 COVID. And so I've made time for music in my life. I recently put out a desperate plea for a French maid outfit so I could start cleaning my own house.
I don't want to picture that. Yeah.
Nobody does. And then it's funny, the first Saturday that I had just been in Washington, D.C. with my 96-year-old mother. The day before I left her senior campus, on the sign on the door was, if you've been overseas or don't feel well, stay out.
Yeah.
Next day I left, it says, if you don't live here, stay out.
Yeah.
So it was perfect timing on my part, and she's doing great.
That's
But
good.
a week later, I had to go pick up stuff that I bought from a Victorian mansion in Oshkosh. I had my 3 employees drive down in separate vehicles. We met one woman there, practiced social distancing, and when my truck and trailer were full, I thought to myself, what am I supposed to do with this stuff now?
Yeah.
So I possess it. I don't know who I'm going to sell it to, but slowly the smalls will go on eBay, and the antique mall will open up sooner or later.
Yeah. Well, I know it's a very tricky thing to try to we don't have a crystal ball. We can't really understand what is going to happen, forward from here. A number of people I've talked to have been, optimistic in online sales, and I think that may be the way we have to, at least for now, up to maybe even 2 years, we have to get very creative and figure out.
I agree with your time frame. It's not going to be 6 weeks and done.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long, long time to get the wrinkles ironed out. And I was privileged to hear the audio of the people you interviewed before me, and they're all important auctioneers who are very well positioned to take advantage of the online markets. As an individual dealer, I'm well positioned on eBay. I have yet to play the Pinterest and all the other little more retail-oriented sites, but I'm smart enough to do it if I need it. I'm bemoaning the fact that the antique mall is closed and that Elkhorn will not happen, a big show in Wisconsin. Brimfield is postponed. What are we supposed to do with all the meat we buy?
That's really a big question. And as I spoke with Rick Unruh from Clars auction, he said, the floodgates are going to open of the things that need to be sold. And, should we tell the buying audience out there that this is, this is going to be a great time to buy, or anything could happen, really. It's almost like guessing at this point. The values online auctions seem to be pretty substantial and pretty much holding. But I don't know if that's going to continue. It's all guesses.
So the values of the good stuff. Wes said if you're a collector, you're a collector.
Yeah.
So back to the meat again. I've watched over the last few years, we both handle estate sales. And my biggest competition comes from the companies that are offering the online or the virtual sales. 40-year-old Greg would have jumped on that wagon within the first week. 69-year-old Greg doesn't need that aspect, or I didn't think I needed the aspect of that business.
Yeah.
And I watched those sales for regular stuff, not antiques. The stuff goes for nothing.
Yeah.
But it goes away.
It goes away. And that's an aspect that people need. It's not like there's a lot of situations where, someone's moving. They have to downsize. It's just the way it is. They're going into assisted living or whatever. B, unfortunately, they pass away, but, the relatives can only take so much even if they want anything. And that has to go somewhere. It's not going to go in the landfills. But, is this, could this floodgate, when it actually opens and the virus is over, is it possible that it's going to be such a flood that we have no idea what will happen with the prices, because of buyers can only buy so much at a time?
That's an interesting question. In normal times, I'll go to a baby boomer or older's home, and they're getting ready to downsize onto a senior campus or an apartment or to move to Florida. And I have to sit there and explain to them that their dining room set is one of a multitude that could be available on any given day of any week. Their sleeper sofa is one of a multitude. Everybody doesn't bring their second bedroom. It goes on and on and on, the multiple items that hit the deck. So it suppresses the price, but there's always people, especially in frugal Wisconsin, that are willing to take advantage of a good deal. So there could be a tidal wave coming, and that could depress the prices even lower. But for that kind of stuff, just be thankful that it's gone. Right now, there's been days that the thrift shops will deny a donation of a china hutch because they have too many on the floor.
Yeah.
I have a friend that's a real estate agent in the wealthy suburbs of Washington, D.C. Recently had a client who's moving from her house to a senior campus. They can find no one to deal with the contents of the house. Not an auctioneer, not an estate sale company, not a thrift store, not come and get it for free. Nobody's taking the stuff. I suggested to her that she'd get her husband and grandkids to throw it in a pod. If she wants the real estate commission, the house has to be empty. But a wave's going to hit. I don't know if it's going to be a tsunami, because if people are going to start venturing out, we're going to get back to normal in baby steps. So initially, well, you know perfectly well, the best auctioneers in New England have always had January 1st or first week of January sales, because people have cabin fever. So there's going to be a lot of cabin fever pent up. And so as the stuff does start to trickle out, it'll get consumed. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be a tsunami or not.
Also, people are, as mentioned by the past guests that I've had on the show, you just mentioned cabin fever. People now, it used to be just winter in the northern states where people were more or less confined to their home and looking around and saying, hey, I could hang this painting over there, and, I want this for my, this for my collection, whatever, because they're living with it more intensely at that time. Now, here we are living with things more intensely. And I think that's what's keeping the, some of the online auctions strong, even at this point. Now, you mentioned earlier, were you actually talking about, is there such a thing as virtual estate sales? Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, absolutely.
How does that work?
The companies come into your house, they spread everything out, they photograph it, they give it a lot number and a 2-line description. It goes on the internet for X number of days. It's like a timed auction. And then at the end, everybody shows up on Saturday between 10 and 5 and picks their stuff up. So, and the commissions tend to be a little higher than what I would charge. And I always ask the customer, when you hire a company, make sure you know what you're paying, when your stuff will be sold, and what happens with the leftover. And of course, there's always going to be stuff that doesn't sell.
Right.
So
that's always an issue. Yeah.
And the people that like this venue are hoarders that are embarrassed by what they have, and people that are very private and don't want their neighbors and strangers walking through their house. And so the guys that are doing it are busy.
Right. Greg, I was thinking, just the thought just came across my mind. I would like to end this podcast with all these different people I've spoken to on kind of like a higher note if possible, because just because. So I would like, if you would, could you share some of the more interesting stories you had when you were door knocking? I would love to hear. There was I believe you knocked on a door in maybe Nova Scotia, and this woman wanted to look at a chest in the attic. There was a couple of really interesting. Maybe that one's not funny. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I do remember it.
It's astonishing. Well, I'll tell you 2 quick ones. That was Mrs. McDonald in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, 90-some years old, tough as nails and tight, Scottish and tight. And in her garage, there was a stairway to the side that led up to an overhead attic. And she gave me permission to go up. I said, the sea chest, do you want to sell that? And now she's clawing her way up the stairs. And the sea chest, there was a sloped roof. So I pulled the sea chest out. She goes, not what's in it. So I had to lift the lid, and the lid was up properly. But as she leaned forward, she pushed the chest back against the wall. The lid came down and knocked her on the head, gashed her head, bleeding and unconscious.
Ouch.
I was with my partner, Jean-Pierre, and I ran downstairs, ran into her house, got some wet water, rags and everything, came back up, and she's finally coming to. And she said, what happened? I said, I don't know what happened. All of a sudden, you took a tumble.
Did she actually go down the stairs?
No, she fell on the floor in front of the chest.
Thank goodness.
So we got her with a big egg, and we got her back together.
Wow. Just, the most important thing, were you able to buy the sea chest?
Yeah, I got the chest.
Sorry.
My favorite Nova Scotia story was a woman. I'm at her door, and she told me, oh, I only buy from that nice picker, Jacques Gilbert.
I mean, you only sell to him? Yeah.
I only sell to Jacques Gilbert, sorry. And I said, oh, dear, you haven't heard. She said, heard what? I said, he was in a car accident and he's dead. She goes, oh, my God. She said, well, come in. And sort of bought stuff. About a month or so later, we're at the PIX, the the meeting of all the fur traders in Quebec. Every 2 weeks or so, every picker in the country would come together and trade their goods. And I'm there, and I feel this tight grip on my shoulder. And he goes, "I'm pretty strong for a dead man, aren't I?" And it was Jacques Gilbert.
Now, if I remember right, you had a lot of things with this Jacques back and forth. There was a lot of things that he would do to you as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. So we're all picking. I mean, we're picking the province of Nova Scotia, the province of New Brunswick, but there's 20 to 30 pickers. So we're constantly zigzagging and either ahead of each other, behind each other. And it was pretty cutthroat.
And there was another story. I'm not sure if you mentioned this online or not, but there was something about a Canadian Louis XVI share.
So yeah, there was a very aggressive dealer. And one day I was talking to my partner, and we were discussing an early French Canadian cupboard that we had found in a very small village. And the village only had probably 90 houses in it.
Can I just stop you right there? Because I want to just say to the listener, because most people would be unaware, these early French influenced Canadian pieces are extremely rare and extremely sought after. Am I right about that?
Yes, they are. Yes,
Yeah.
they are. Thousands.
Yeah. Okay,
So
continue.
this dealer overheard our conversation at the restaurant, threw down this check. He did like a Dukes of Hazzard out of the parking lot with the gravel flying. And I looked and I thought, oh no. And sure enough, he's off to the village and he got a cupboard. And I didn't. It took him maybe a day to find it. So we were buying in France at the time. I had a pair of Louis XIV chairs that, if they had been Canadian, would have been high dollar, but they were French. So I put them in the basement of a small village where my repairman's mother lived. And then I had loose lips at the restaurant again. And within 2 days, those chairs are in the front of his shop in the big picture window with a $5,000 price tag on them. I told the pickers, my repairman's mother, not to take less than $1,500 for the 2 chairs. And then the expert from Montreal came and straightened them out. That they were French and worth about $350 to $500 for the pair.
Wow. So I guess, yeah. Did you ever end on a good note with him, or was it always like that?
He never knew who did it. Revenge is best served cold. He had no idea. Yeah.
Wow. Well, hey, Greg, we're all in this together. This is a very trying time, and I think in a strange way, a historic time. But thank you for some of those enlightening stories.
Well,
Except I forgot the poor woman got hurt. That's I'm sorry about that part.
Well, it was an accident, but she survived. She was tough as.
All right, everyone, that's it for the show. Thank you for listening, and stay safe, and look forward to upcoming episodes.